Today we are putting together your printmaking book project. So you're going to need a couple of things. You are going to need 4 book pages. These are pre-cut by me, so 4 pages. I've got 4, a couple of extra here. So you need 4 book pages. You need the best print that you made. You need 2 pieces of mat board. These are scrap pieces of mat board. It doesn't really matter which color they are, but they do have to be exactly the same size. So these 2 pieces happen to be exactly the same size. If your 2 pieces are not the same size, you should check in with me and I will cut them down for you so they're both the same size. You'll need double-sided tape. This is industrial strength double-sided tape, rubber cement, a ruler, a pencil, and then you'll need some things from this box of bookmaking supplies. You'll need a pair of scissors. This is called an awl, used for piercing holes in paper. This is called a bone folder. This is for folding paper. You'll need a needle and some bookbinding thread. I have a couple of different packages of this if need be. So I'm gonna start today with the cover of my book. I'm gonna make the cover of my book. I do have instructions for this printed out for you on the counter if you need them. It's step by step with all the steps that you need to do for this project. So the instructions actually say to start with the pages, so that's where I'll start. So I'm gonna need a bone folder in my 4 pages for this. You are going to fold each of these pages in half, one at a time. This is important to make sure that the crease is nice and even, so I'm gonna fold it corner to corner. And then I'm gonna use my bone folder to basically press down on this crease and make sure that it is completely creased nice and flat. This is going to help ensure that your book closes nice and flat. So again, corner to corner. Use the bone folder. Okay, so you have 4 pieces folded corner to corner. They should all match up and you can stack them inside of each other so that their creases match up. Once their creases match up, I'm just gonna make sure they all slide inside of each other like this. And then I'm actually going to lay this crease side down and I'm gonna need my ruler. I'm gonna line my ruler up on the outside of this book and I'm gonna make a little mark in the spine of this book at 1.5 inches, 3 inches, and 4.5 inches. This is where I'm gonna sew my book together. So now I'm gonna fold this again, make sure it's completely lined up. This is important because I'm now going to use my bookmaking awl to poke holes through the spine of this book to make sure that I have holes to sew this book with. Now, when you're using the awl, please be mindful of your fingers. This is basically a giant needle and it will definitely hurt if you poke your fingers with it. So I'm just going to kind of use some pressure on the table. I'm going right through the crease. It's important that it's nice and lined up here. And I'm just gonna poke a hole in all 3 little marks, okay? So next, I am going to go ahead and grab some thread and a needle, and I'm going to thread one of my needles with this bookbinding thread. You don't need a lot of thread. I would say, you know, about this much is probably enough. And you can see I have it folded twice. So this string is actually twice the length that you see here. When I stretch it out, it's about as long as my desk, okay? So it's about as long as my desk. I'm gonna thread one side through my needle. And then I'm pulling it through to meet the other side. This needle basically goes halfway on your string. You'll want the 2 ends to meet up on the very end. You do not need to worry about tying a knot in the end of this string. We're not actually going to need a knot on the end. You just need to pull it through so the thread is 2 strings thick. So holding your book with the, you'll want to pay attention to the inside of your book and the outside of the book. I'm going to go in the center hole through the back of the book. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to go down through the bottom hole of my book on the inside, and you have to make sure that the thread and the needle goes through all of the pages. Okay, so I'm pulling that down. The other side of my book looks like this. I have a little tail here. And then on the outside of my book, I'm going to go all the way to the top hole, and I'm going to go down through the top hole. And then on the inside of the book, I'm going to go down through the center again. So you'll see 2 stitches on the inside, and you'll see your tails on the outside. I'm going to put one side of this thread on each side of my stitch right here, and then I'm just going to kind of gently pull it tight. I can cut this off of the needle. I'm going to put my needle back in this paper so it does not get lost. Oops. And then I need to tie this. So I'm going to gently pull it. Don't pull too tight, too hard, because you don't want to rip the holes that you made. I'm then going to just tie these together and make 2 knots. 1, 2 knots. And then I'm going to cut a little bit of this extra string off. Don't cut it too short. You don't want it accidentally unraveling. About 1 inch of string is perfectly fine. So now your book is tied together, and you have one insert of pages that we're going to go ahead and insert into your completed book. So now we're going to work on the actual cover. After you get your pages done, check in with me and we'll get started on the next step. So here I have my piece of paper, and it is completely printed. This is my best print. We're going to be working with the print side down. Hopefully I've had the chance to flatten your image. If not, make sure you let me know and I can press it in the heat press to make sure this paper is nice and flat to begin with. So we are going to basically be gluing these 2 pieces down into the center of your book. I'm actually going to recommend double-sided tape for this step. So I'm going to put, I think what I'm going to do, it doesn't really matter one way or the other, just make sure you put the same side down for both. So I think I'm going to tape the white side down. So with this double-sided tape, it is extremely sticky. This is industrial strength double-sided tape. So what I'm going to do is kind of measure out. I'm going to measure this out here, and I'm just going to place it down on my cover. Please keep in mind that once you place this tape down, there is no moving it. So if you're worried about getting this in the right spot the first time, you might want to use rubber cement. Okay, so there's the first one. Okay, I have double-sided tape on all 4 edges of both of my pieces of paper, or both of my mat board. So to make this double-sided tape work, you need to peel off this brown piece, and that's going to leave a layer of tape. So I'm going to do that for all of my pieces. All right, I've got the brown peeled off of my double-sided tape. Now I'm gonna place these down onto my mat board, or onto my printmaking paper. So I'm just gonna flip these over one at a time. I'm gonna make them hopefully straight, and then I'm just gonna press it down. And I'm gonna put a little pressure on there to make sure it sticks. I'm then gonna line the next one up. If it's helpful for you, you could line up your ruler on one side of this, and you want maybe a quarter inch space between the two. We want to make sure that this book is going to close, to open and close properly, so we're going to leave just a little bit of space. All right, so now we've got 2 pieces of mat board stuck to your printmaking paper, and this is the start of your book cover. So we need to actually cut a little excess paper off here. So I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to just draw myself a line, and we're going to be cutting off this kind of like right triangle here. So I'm trying to make sure that the angle is relatively the same on both sides. I'm doing a little bit of estimating here, but for the most part, I think I should be okay. And then I'm just going to use my scissors to snip off these edges. All right, so add those to my garbage pile. Now, these little edges that I made are going to be we're going to end up folding them over like this. And you can see why I cut them at an angle like this, so that they would meet up here and there wouldn't be any weird overlap. So I have enough space on my paper to double stick tape this, so I think that's what I'm gonna do. It's a little bit more secure than the rubber cement, so I think that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna run this double-sided tape right up to the edge of my mat board. All right, so it is important that you get this as even as possible, as close to the edge as possible. So you're gonna go ahead and then peel off the tape, peel off the brown paper. All right, and then one at a time, we're gonna pull these nice and tight, and we're gonna crease it and lay it flat when we fold it over. All right, so if there are any edges that kind of stick up like this, no worries. We are gonna end up putting our papers in here, but here you can see I've got a completed cover. So now it's time to take our pages and put them into our cover so we can complete our finished book. So for this step, I'm actually going to recommend rubber cement. So rubber cement is it's a glue that it's basically removable. So if you make a mistake or it's not perfect the first time you do it, you can actually pull it up and try again. This kind of works like Velcro. So I'm going to put a layer of rubber cement on the inside kind of square of my book. Don't go too far over onto the edge of your book cover, because your pages are slightly smaller. If you look at this, your pages are slightly smaller than the actual cover of your book. Okay, so pay attention to how close to the edge you're getting. Okay, so I'm putting rubber cement on this. If it dries, it's okay, all right? If it dries, it's okay, because rubber cement acts like Velcro when it's dry. All right, so now on the book pages, I'm going to be putting glue on the outside of the book, not the inside, the outside of these two pages. So this kind of looks like a tent or a roof on my table here. So I'm just going to brush some rubber cement on here. I'm getting the corners to make sure they lay down flat. And I'm gonna move my cover over. This is starting to get a little bit tacky, as is my book. I'm just gonna let that dry just a little bit. And then I'm going to lay this down so the crease of my book pages is in the center of that spine there. I'm gonna center it. Lay down and press. And then I'm gonna close my book, make sure the pages close, open it. I'm basically gonna kind of like open and close this a couple of times just to make sure that it's gonna completely close. If you have any corners that are kind of lifting up like this, you could go back in with a little bit more rubber cement. Oop, that's too much rubber cement. I'll show you what to do with this if you accidentally end up with too much. I'll show you what to do with that. So I'm gonna wipe off at least a little bit of the excess, and I'll show you what I'm gonna do with the extra glue here. Okay, so I'm gonna let this dry while I go clean off the glue from my hands, and I'll be right back. All right, one of the great things about rubber cement is that when it's dry, if you get some on a spot that you didn't intend for it to be there, you can actually just kind of rub it and it comes right off. So I did notice like here I have another spot that kind of lifted a little bit, so I'm just gonna put a little bit more rubber cement in there. Then I'm gonna hold this closed. And there you have it. You have a little book with some pages in that you can use for whatever you'd like. So, cover, pages, finished product.